Welcome to the SQOLOGY Podcast, brought to you by ResoNix. Visit ResoNixSoundSolutions.com for the best ways to free your car, motorcycle, house, or spaceship from resonance with ResoNix. And many thanks to ResoNix for making this podcast a reality.
It's definitely getting into the SQ side of stuff has been very different.
For sure.
I always wanted things to sound good. You know, my parents were musicians. I played a little bit in high school, so I've always liked music and how making it sound right. Didn't know what I was doing. I still don't, but getting better.
I shouldn't really have to introduce you since, you're probably the most qualified expert we've had on here. But, for the sake of formalities, who are you and how'd you get into car audio in the first place?
I'm Drew Jones, owner of Bassahaulic Productions is what I'm most known for. I've been in the industry in general 12 or 13 years. So when I was 19, I got hired at a shop for the first time. So
okay,
I've been in and out for a while, and then before that, I was hobbyist since I was 14, 15, 16. So my entire life at this point.
What's your timeline on when you're going to move up and try to start getting loud?
Oh, I did that already.
Oh, okay.
yeah. That was super easy. But no, I do actually. I've competed a bunch over the years in SPL. Never gone after any world championships. I've had a couple builds that were, if you look at the standings, they would have won, but showing up's half the battle, so it doesn't matter. This year, we're going to start building our nitro to really compete in SPL and go for a couple championships. But
has your interest just been in car audio in general? Were you most interested in SPL? I mean, obviously, you got Bassahaulic Productions. What is that, by the way? What's Bassahaulic Productions?
So Bassahaulic started off as just a username on CACO and ROE. For those, I guess, the three people who may not know, car audio classifies in realm of excursion. Bassahaulic was just my poor attempt at spelling Bassahaulic because Louisiana public education was not great and I was 12. So
nice.
And it was never meant to be anything other than just a username. Even when I had the initial logo design done, it was just to have a sticker on cars. That was it. I had no intentions of doing anything beyond that. But stuff happens.
So what was your first competition experience like? What were you competing with and how'd you get into it?
Oh man. First competition would have been, I was 16, so probably scraping the coast. I think
Okay.
I've been Sick Nick, which was in Gonzales, Louisiana, my area. It would have been two L715s on some Sundown SAZ 1000s maybe. Doing a solid 144.
Nice. Yeah. Sweet.
Oh yeah, no, it was. I was very fortunate that one of the first people I met really in car audio was a fellow named Brett Arsenault. I was 16, 17, and he was already doing 160 plus on music way back then. So I was fortunate to jump straight to the deep end and not have to go the long way around.
Were you competing in USAC then, or?
Yep, it was basically exclusively USAC. That's all we have down here.
Right.
Well, we have Bass Wars now, but the closest DB drag event we've ever had was like 5 hours away. So
it's basically finals.
Yep, effectively. And then we had a couple IASCA here and there, and a couple Mecca events, Mecca SPL, and that's about it. Everything else has been USAC and now Bass Wars.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of the current state of SPL competition in general? Because I guess, obviously I'm not as in touch there, but you are, and I think you've got a good crossover there. So just what's the general feel, and I mean, where's the competitor experience sitting in that realm?
So most of my experience is still going to be with Bass Wars, just because they're super local, and it seems to be all their shows have more people every show, and it seems to be growing quickly, which is great. It seems to be there's more car audio as a whole, in my area at least, is growing again. Just in general, there's more people. I hear more bass throughout the day. I work from home, so I hear the people coming and going throughout the neighborhood, and I hear more bass. And it's nice. But the competition side, definitely same thing. Seems like it's growing.
Is it like purpose-built vehicles? Is it more the homegrown,
homegrown stuff? Yeah. Just guys building loud systems and
yeah,
going to compete. That's about it. Every now and then you'll run into some purpose-built SPL vehicles, but they, from what I can tell, they generally stay home most of the year. Like even
they know where they stand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think y'all talked about that on your last podcast, that people like SPL, they know where they're at. Mm-hmm. Like SQ, you don't know. I mean, you might have an idea of where you're at, and even from event to event, it can be a big shift. The Term Lab, and then getting more affordable, and then all these other cheaper, more affordable SPL meters. Everyone knows where they're at, so no one's going to make those 6-hour drives to go. They know they're in 6th place. There's no chance they're going to do any better.
Yeah, so it's going to be the more of the new people who don't know where to go with it, or need to learn, or whatever else, and don't have a turn.
I think that's going to be the biggest hindrance going forward. Still with World Finals and bigger events, just everyone knows where they're at. Nobody wants to waste the money to go. Well, I don't consider it wasting money. No one wants to spend the money to go. They know they're going to lose.
Right.
But locally, no, the events, they're great. It seems like they're getting bigger, which is awesome.
That's good. So you see, I guess, kind of probably what's similar to what's happening, I think, in sound quality, which it's been there off and on. It's just been a matter of probably in your case too. It's been a matter of having people to put on the local events. So step one.
Yep.
But it seems like when those local events are going, that's what kind of sees the most growth. And then the finals events is like, we'll see. What got you crossing over into sound quality, and what was your interest there?
So like I said, I've always wanted things to sound good. Mm-hmm. I ran active crossovers basically since I started car audio. My first introduction with DSP was 360.2 and 360.3 forever ago. I just never bothered anything else. I'm like, all right, well, this is definitely the way to go. I can tell, more control. I've always wanted to sound good. Just didn't really have a whole lot of help in my area, a whole lot of experience. Mm-hmm. I had Taylor Gardner just years ago. He's still here, but years ago he was helping me with a little bit. A guy named Matt Sibley was helping me, just off and on. And then it was the big jump happened. What was the last Aggie Land that was at the old shop?
2019 19 would be.
So that was my first real SQ event. Mm-hmm. I went there. Me and my wife went. Taylor asked, invite us out, and because I didn't know about it, didn't know anyone there. I was like, I don't want to just go and not know anybody. Right. So I went with Taylor, and first SQ vehicle I ever heard was Chris's Civic.
Oh wow!
First one ever.
That's a solid, strong step. First step.
Yeah, it was something. So we start there, and then everyone was super friendly. It was a lot different than SPL was in our area at the time. It was very aggressive out here.
The SPL was.
The competition scene was very active, is the best way to put it. So everyone was super nice, and they're like, man, these cars sound great. I was like, I want to do something like this. And then just over time got my Duramax that I use now for SQ. Is like, I drive it a lot. Let me start making it better. Mm-hmm. Making it a little better. Like, okay, I still don't really know what I'm doing, but I'll figure it out. Get to going. I compete for the first time in SQ at Sundown Show 2021, 2022? Mm-hmm. 21. One of those two.
The one in Knoxville?
Nope. South Carolina.
Oh, okay.
At the Hickory Motor Speedway. Mick Wallace was judging.
Yeah.
And I made him hate me, and I think he still hates me.
Why is that?
So my truck was bad. Bad. Mid-bass, just 180 out, no treatment. It was rough. He got out of Jeff Arkham's truck, walked directly to my truck and got in.
Contrast.
I knew who Jeff Arkham was, so I knew how good it was.
Right.
I was like, he's gonna, that's tough. He just gets out and walks away. Like,
whoops.
I'm like, let me just go back to my to my Tahoe that's on the other side of the track. Let me just leave.
Right.
So I was like, man, he just has to hate me. There's no way. And then I think it was just one day. I can't remember exactly when, but into 22 maybe. Jeffrey messages me and he's like, "Hey, let me help you learn stuff." Okay, and
Jeffrey
that
Hall.
was Jeffrey Hall. Yeah, that was the intro into that.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, I appreciate it. And then just the guys at Mobile Toys have all been great with helping me learn stuff. And everyone's been super great. It's been awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I may cause a little ruckus here and there, but
I was going to ask about that in particular in terms of some of the ruckus and in terms of some of the videos you put out and testing and things like that obviously have got under some people's skin. And I guess what your intent is there on your part, because I'm not saying this is factual, but sometimes it comes across that you're not necessarily taking the SQ scene seriously for what it is, but also kind of expecting to be taken serious. I'm just kind of throwing out perception there. So,
yeah, for sure.
So my intent here is to get what your intent is when you put some of that stuff out there. Is it just simply to spark conversation and get some movement going? Is it, or what are
so,
you?
Like, so video wise, like when I post these like the audio comparison videos or just amp testing videos, I know that it's obviously not lab grade or not official, and I know that. Most of this stuff I was doing, like learning about all this measurements and testing. I was learning about this before anyone knew that I was going to post anything. Right. I was just learning it for fun, and that's still all this testing and comparisons. To me, it's still just fun. It's still just I'm learning as I go, and I say that. I think some people think that I'm being insincere when I say that I'm still learning constantly. So if you see something wrong, I want to know, because I don't know a lot of this stuff. And I take the SQ stuff. I take it seriously. I've been putting in a ton of work. I think part of it. I think some of that perception comes from it's I think some of the SPL that still comes out because we're so used to, like, say someone who's well respected, old timer says something to somebody. Normally in SQ, from what I've seen, that's just the end of it. No one says anything. No one claps back. That doesn't occur. Mm-hmm. It occurs with me. I'm not on anyone's payroll in SQ or any of these high end companies, so I don't have to hold back what I think in any regard.
Right.
And I think a lot of the people aren't used to that.
Right. Well, I think, yes, it is. But I think, and this is what I was getting at, in one of the previous episodes that we had, it's one of those things when you put stuff out there, I think it's important to have context wrapped around it to where it's not just a, bleh, here's the data, take for it what you, well, it's just the data, it kind of excuses the person providing the data from accountability for what they're providing without some context on how to read and understand it. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's also part of why I've been limiting. Like, I've measured at this point a ton of equipment. I've only put out a couple of full like data sets, mainly on like Down for Sound amps, because it's a friend of mine. So I'm like, look, this may not be perfectly accurate immediately, but that's part of that's why I'm holding back all this data so I'm in the process of working with, so currently I guess it's JL, Kicker, Tony's going to help me out a little bit, and then DD. They all have APs, so I'm comparing all of my data to data from them and getting equipment from them to compare against my results. That way I have like, well, look, here's proof my measurements are accurate.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think part of that too is what the measurements mean.
Yeah, and that's what and that's why that's another reason why I've been holding back data and figuring out what tests I want to do.
Sure.
So I can work with guys like Matt Mergenthal. He's technical trainer at JL. He's very good with words, much better than I am. So working with him to make some write-ups as to explaining what means what when you're looking at it on these graphs.
Right.
That way I'm not just putting out a bunch of data that that doesn't mean anything to anybody.
Right. So what's your, and again, I want to clarify that I'm not being critical of what you're doing. I'm trying to understand what you're doing. And I think the more understanding there is, the more people can embrace that and jump in and help. I mean, like, what is, with the end in mind, what is your goal once that data gets out? Like, I mean, what?
No real goal. I just want to measure things, and like all this measurement stuff really was just me wanting to learn more about how audio works, how sound works, how these electronics work, because I just don't know. I don't have any official training. I don't have any higher education by any means. So I'm learning this stuff constantly, and that's why all this started.
I got you. Yeah. And that makes perfect sense. I mean, it's a process I think people go through. And I think it's commendable that you're taking the effort and time and resources to do that. I mean, there's I don't think there's anybody going to criticize that for sure. What is your process as far as you're testing what, like, and I'm not being critical of the equipment process. I am curious at this point, like, what, because I haven't really dove into what you're doing there, and I imagine most people haven't. Yeah.
No, and I haven't posted a bunch of data on this, right, on these things yet, because I'm still figuring out the process of exactly what I want to do and what to measure.
But how are you doing it? What are you using? What's your setup? Like, what? Because I know you've put a lot of effort into that. So
yeah. So we'll do amplifiers just because that's the one I've been spending the most time on. Because the anechoic stuff with speakers, just, I think I'm gonna leave that obviously the anechoic data, that's for Aaron. I don't have a clippable near field scanner yet. Yeah. But like electrical measurements from amps, we'll do that. I've always seen these 5-watt measurements, and to me they never made sense because I don't play anything at 5 watts. Right. 5 watts is quite. You've been around the Tahoe. 5 watts is the turn on bump for that truck.
Right.
On a good day. So I'm like, forever I've always thought, those don't really make sense to me. I understand having a comparable thing. I was like, that doesn't make sense. So I started learning about these measurements, what they mean. Why are people measuring at such low power? Start digging into it, building up my testing setup. And then I saw Tony DeMore post measuring things at half-rated power. I was like, I actually kind of like that. That's a repeatable thing. Like, everything has a rated power. Everything has a half-rated power.
Right.
We can do that. So equipment-wise, I've been using the JL Max to measure everything electrically. It has, 2 high-level inputs that go up to a pretty high voltage, and then a low-level reference input that's super quiet, negative 120, 125 dB. So it can measure most DSPs and stuff like that to an extent. Power-wise, it's 300 amps of DC current available in the shop, anywhere from 12 to 15 volts, 10 banks of supercaps, and a dedicated 220-volt, 50-amp circuit with isolated ground and power conditioner for the power supplies. And then the Max has its own power conditioner and isolated ground as well. Wow. Okay. And then been using REW to do a lot of the automated measurements currently, because there's just Tune doesn't have any type of automated testing sequence yet. So been using REW to do a bunch of the automated distortion measurements and stuff like that.
I got you. Very nice. So you're doing the test that you're working on now, you're doing at like Tony's half-rated power, then? That's pretty much...
Yep. Okay. Yeah, well, so I do everything I've been measuring so far, I do the half-rated power for everything, but I also do the 5-watt or 4.5 volt measurement as well. Mm-hmm. Just that way, the data, whenever I decide that I'm going to start posting amp data and all this stuff, I have that information too, because I know people are going to want it no matter what.
At the end of the day, what signifies good versus bad when it comes to this?
See, and that's one reason why I've never said one amp is good or bad. Because, I mean, we know, we can read that, everything below 0.005% THD is good. Like, that's great, but that is so incredibly low.
Right.
Like, 0.1% THD is already, like, 0.1% is completely inaudible.
As soon as you start playing music, forget about it.
It's way above that. Yeah, you close your door, boom, there's 10%.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know what. I don't want to be the person that says that's good, that's bad, just because it's such a huge range.
I get it, and that's kind of why I'm asking, because it seems like people put the data out there, and it's like, oh, I can't. This thing is so terrible, and the average person.
Yeah. Then I look at it. I'm like, bro, it's 0.1. What are you talking about? It's 0.1% that made 1,000. What are you talking about? 1,000 watts? What do you mean? That's terrible. But that's why the 5-watt data to me never made sense. Like, you get really good looking numbers, but my SQ truck, the white truck, it's 5 watts. What is the mid bass turn on bump?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, what good is that? Is that distortion data?
Right.
Now, you get groups like the Distortion Factory, and they're all about the low power measurements, which is awesome, but I just don't.
It's not practical.
And then like I mentioned a minute ago, the 0.005% THD, or these crazy low numbers.
Mm-hmm.
We can't hear that. That's so far beyond what humans can hear, that it's just I don't know. I don't know.
You said that you don't really have plans for speakers, but like you do the.
Yeah, I've been doing just the side by side stuff. I know I've been on all sides of the industry at this point. So like I know, I've been in retail, I've been a hobbyist, I do what I do now. I work with a bunch of manufacturers. So like I know what the average person is going to I could post all the distortion data I want. The average consumer, it does not give a shit.
Right.
They don't care.
Right.
They want to hear. They want that video that shows the two speakers side by side. That's what they want.
Right.
It does not matter if it is correct. It does not matter if it's accurate.
Right.
As long as I am the person presenting the data, the video, as long as it's the same way, tested in the same fashion. That way, look, these conditions are the exact same between every test. This is how it sounds side by side.
Right.
That's all. And the average consumer would probably barely care about that.
Right.
Because there's two different sides of the industry. So a lot of the stuff that I do for the bass head community that bleeds over to the SQ side, there's two totally separate groups of people.
Oh, for sure.
With completely different cares, about what they're looking at.
Right.
Like I know the side by, like I'm not going to do a ZR800 versus a TM8 mid bass comparison in my shop. I'm not doing it. There's no point for that. Because number one, the SQ people, they're obviously gonna be like, that's stupid. And yeah, it's kind of stupid. But the SPL guys are like, no, I want to hear that super tweeter versus that super tweeter. Like what? Like how much shriller is it? How much louder is it?
Right. It's just, especially when they're just throwing power on it and going, right? It's not like they're not sitting there tweaking it for however many hours like we do.
No, we're just now getting to the point where the average bass head will recommend a DSP to their friend.
Right.
I mean, just in the last year. Just because how complicated DSPs have seemed to a lot of people over the years, so they've avoided them.
Right.
So they'll run their 6.5s full range. Well, low pass and high pass on the radio, 100 hertz.
Right.
So 100 hertz and up for the crossover.
Doom, done.
Yeah, no, that's why stunt walls got such an awful reputation for so long. I mean, they're still annoyingly loud, but if everything's running full range, I mean, you know how well that's going to go.
Right. Being that you recently and you're kind of constantly crossing over between the worlds of SQ and SPL, and I bring this up because it seems like there's kind of a recent, and I don't know where all the motives are, but there seems to be kind of this constant proselytization from the sound quality side of the SPL world. And I think it's generally just because the numbers are typically bigger on SPL. So then the sound quality world is sitting there going, hey, there's these people who are into car audio. They'll like sound quality too. Let's get them over here. I mean, I've been very clear for a very long time. My circle of interest in competition is very a small circle at this point. And me personally, because of that small circle, I'm not looking for growth, because by the time it gets to my point, I'm limiting people. I'm not pulling people in. I'm not the person to be, growing things in terms of trying to find new guys to bring in, because they're going to be disappointed when they come to, Aggie Land or a Lone Star or an SVR, right? It's a pretty big jump.
I mean, my first events were those. Frisco was the first time I really competed.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember. I'm really bad with time because I like time frames on things.
Yeah, me too.
So it was after Frisco, but it was at some point that you were like, SQOLOGY's done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, like damn, like I love that shit. Like, hold on, like, what's he mean it's done? Like, that doesn't make sense. So I was like, because the smaller shows that are, I prefer a smaller, calmer show.
Sure.
But that's coming from these SPL shows I attend where there's thousands of people and I set up a booth and
right.
It's hundreds of people through the booth a day, and it's a lot. It's a lot. And as I get older, I deal with the constant social stuff a little bit worse and worse, and that's
me too.
That's just me. Yeah. So I go to these SQ shows and it's calm, relaxed. It's not huge. It's not hundreds of people. I'm like, this is nice.
Everybody's focused too. But I guess my point there was like, do you see a benefit in that effort as far as is there a point of crossover between the two worlds?
Oh yeah. I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be the older SPL guys, older bass heads, who as they get older they make the crossover, kind of like I did. I said I'm not older, but I've been in the SPL game for a long time at this point. But no, I mean, I think more people need to learn, like SPL guys in particular, bass heads. A lot of them just don't know what sounds good. It's not their fault, So they don't even. They're like, a lot of people consider SQ, on the bass head side, they call SQ just doors full of speakers, like dozens of speakers, as long as it's clear and not distorting. Sound quality.
It's sound quality, right?
Yep. So I think, and I've been trying to, anytime a bass head wants to hear my white truck at a big event, as long as there's not a mid 60 demo vehicle within 100 feet, I'm like, yeah, man, let's hear it. I'll let you hear it, and I'll let you hear what quote it's supposed to sound like, whether it's good or not. That's up to you, but.
It's gonna be a big jump. It's gonna be a big jump for them, though. Like, I mean,
I get it all the time. So a local company owner stopped by the other day to hear the truck, and I remember the first time he heard it, he was like looking up in my headliner and like in the middle of my dash to find center speakers. I'm like, that's awesome. No, man, nope. Yeah. I'm like, no center speakers. Everything's on left and right. Like there's a center sub. You got me, but that's not what you're hearing.
Right. Yeah, that's got to be the biggest compliment when somebody starts looking around for the center speaker.
Oh, I love it. I love that. And it's because it's guys who've never heard it, and it's not their it's not their fault, just because you end up in your world and you just don't cross over.
For sure. Well, it's the same for SQ guys. They're not jumping over into in the SPL world. So.
Oh yeah, like I knew that whenever I brought the Tahoe to Aggie, that I knew that a lot of people there had never seen something that loud.
Right.
Just because it's just the way SPL guys had never seen a vehicle that sounds as good as Thanos or Brian's car or any of that stuff.
Right.
Hell, you showed it. Most SPL guys, the Chris's Civic, their just mind is blown to pieces.
Ouch!
Just obliterated.
Yeah, right. As a statement piece, that's cool. But I mean, I think it's not necessarily approachable for most people to go, oh yeah, me too. I can do that.
It's definitely on the big end. It's the same thing with giant SPL demo systems like my Tahoe. It's the average person looks at it, they go, good Lord, that's a lot of equipment. Right. And it is. It's no way around it. It's not super approachable. But I just like getting them into something. Like just get them into the Duramax, and they're like, oh man, this sounds great. I want my truck to sound like this. Or like with my rebuild of the Tahoe I'm working on, I'm going to make it image as best I can. I'm dropping total number of speakers in the cabin for mid bass, try to help that with the comb filtering a little bit. And I'm going to do my best. But like, look, man, this is how good your SPL vehicle could sound. Right. Now think about how good your normal vehicle could sound, your daily driver.
Right.
There's a big misconception that to do SQ is, to make something sound good, it's expensive. And it's not.
Right.
Now, if you want to compete on the big level, yeah, I mean, it's gonna take some dollars. There's no way around that. But it's the same way at SPL. If you want to compete at the big level, it's going to be expensive. But you don't have to compete at in extreme class or Pro 3 or anything like that. So that's another thing I've been working on. The SPL guys, like, look, I mean, it doesn't have to be expensive. Like, we could do it for a lot cheaper than you're thinking.
But I think that does come in some benefit with some of the testing you're doing, because I mean, I've always been a proponent of path of least resistance, and you don't have to spend huge money on certain equipment in order to get good sound. You know what I mean? I mean, even though I work in the sound quality industry, we've always, yes, here's the high end pretty thing. If you're going to do custom pillars and panels and all this other stuff, we have that for you, right? But also, if you're wanting to upgrade your factory locations with something that gets really close, but you don't need that extra last 20% in terms of materials and stuff, you can get there for a comparatively budget price. We're not saying that you have to spend this amount of money to get good sound. It's just that, and it's same with like amplifiers and stuff like that. To me, it's like, hey, if you want to go and buy the Rolex, go for it. But don't think that you have to, I would rather you spend money on the install and the tuning and sound deadening and getting the environment correct and learning before you
doing some $1,000 a piece speakers.
Exactly. Or $20,000 amp or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
yep. And that's part of the misconception on the SPL side, that these guys think that you have to have these crazy expensive speakers to have something that sounds good. Like, man, you really don't. And that was part of my initial thing with whenever I got into this. I was running, I think I had some kicker QS stuff, and I got the Karma 3s initially because Taylor said that they were fantastic. So I was like, all right, well, let me get some of those, and they sounded great. And that was me showing the SPL guys, like, look, man, like none of this stuff's super expensive. Like, you could easily make something sound really good. Yep. I ended up changing equipment just because I'm hanging out with you are who you hang out with. I'm hanging out with like Jeffrey and Chris and all these guys. Like, I'm hanging out with these guys who are like, oh yeah, we're doing these crazy good builds with these awesome speakers, crazy scores. I'm like, well, maybe I should probably just go ahead and get some more expensive speakers. Mm-hmm. And then it didn't help that there's actually a local guy very close to James Abear. He lives like in my town, and he has that all Focal Utopia truck that just sounds astounding. I'm like, all right, I got to at least get as good as James's truck.
Now you got
at least get that good.
Whether it's, and I guess I'll let you pick who, but as far as whether it's the competitors or the event coordinators or the brands or whomever, like, who and how do you think that the sound quality community can do better at reaching the SPL community and I think maybe the market in general?
That's a good question. I've never really considered. So, I mean, the brands are going to do brand things. That's just brands will never reach community. Brands are too brand. That's not what the average cardio person. They said they don't really care what brands are doing. They want to make a personal connection with people. I mean, the community. I would say this is going to be a hot take, but it's not, because it's a common thought, especially from the SPL side, that SQ guys are just snobby as shit. And they're not wrong to an extent.
Right.
There's a bunch of guys who are just very uppity. It's like, oh, that's cool, man. And that's another reason why I like the guys over at MTI have been so great, because to me, they've always just seemed like just bros who like really loud music, but they want to sound good.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my introduction to SQ, was with them and with like Taylor Gardner and Brad Knobloch, just dudes who were just hanging out and like to make stuff sound good.
Yep.
But I hear from so many SPL guys, like, you know, I do a weekly podcast live stream with Bobby Gately. He's out in California.
Yep.
He's, you know, builds super loud stuff. And his first introduction to SQ was, oh, we can't turn it up or we'll get yelled at. And no, we're not giving demos.
Right.
Like, oh, well, it's not very welcoming to a group of people who are so used to it. Just, yeah, man, get in. Let's listen to it. Turn it up.
Yep. No.
And it's, yeah, I think that's gonna be part of it.
Well, I think part of that is just the different. There's
Yeah.
almost necessarily a different aspect there, and you have the people who gravitate toward SQ are more naturally nerdy.
Yep.
It's
and then they're often just older people, because the guys who are going to these shows to compete and do all this, they're older, so they have the money
right
to do this stuff, because SQ isn't even entry fees for SQ isn't cheap.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as compared to SPL, where it's less than $100,
Right.
and you could enter like every class at Slam, or
Right.
close.
Well,
Whereas like Aggie is like $400.
right. Yeah. With the volume that you have, and that's part of the big shows when it comes to sound quality ends up being a small limited show to a certain degree, because to do it at the quality level that's expected at that level, it has.
Yep.
You have to limit it, so you end up necessarily with the amount of expense and budget that goes into it. It ends up being a not cheap to go. But I think on the flip side, obviously that's what makes it a very different type of competition and approaching it there. But yeah, I
mean,
I like what you said though, as far as making the connection there, and maybe that's just part of it, is that some of the people who are better at reaching out can do more, there. And I think that can happen some at the brand level, because I think they're, especially the smaller brands are probably the ones that are most incentivized to be able to make that connection. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're still working. The smaller brands can do more interpersonal things without having to worry about, oh, this is so and so from whatever company.
Mm-hmm.
They can be, and like I said, they're more incentivized to do so, to grow.
Yeah.
But some of it is on the larger companies, like JL and all these, Helix, Brax, and whatever their parent company is, and all these larger companies. Like if you look at Kicker on the SPL side, they're getting back into SPL and they're coming out big subs, big amps again. But they have been investing into the community. They've sponsored every major World Finals for the last 6 years straight.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they attended or not, they were the lead sponsor of every show, of every event. Just because, if you want your community to grow, you have to invest into it. So,
Sure.
you're definitely right that the brands can do more to grow the community. Because out of sight, out of mind, pops in my head. If
Right.
no one sees SQ because there's only 5 good events every year, and it's $400 to enter the classes,
Mm-hmm.
they're just not going to go.
Yeah. Well, and there's a big barrier of entry there when even
Mm-hmm.
your finals event, especially, there's the few people who are brave enough to come out and do it, but there's certainly a barrier of entry there, a secret knock you
Mm-hmm.
kind of have to figure out to do it, and that's where we could definitely do better at ramping people into that.
So I did a lot of driving last year by myself, just because my wife has a full-time career. She's been there forever, so she can't always go with me to a lot of these things I do.
Sure.
Did a lot of driving alone last year, back and forth between Kicker and here and there. But, I got to thinking about it, is if it wasn't for Taylor Gardner saying, hey, just come with me to this event that I'd never heard of, didn't know anything about it. At that point, I was already, deep in the SPL community. So I go to all these other shows, but I never even heard of this shop. Never even heard of Mobile Toys.
Mm-hmm.
So, without him, I would have never gone. So I would have never even. So everyone who doesn't like me in SQ can just blame Taylor Gardner. It's all his fault.
I blame Taylor for everything anyway. So we're on the same page
fair
there.
enough. But without having that secret knock or that person to be like, hey, come this way.
Right.
I wouldn't know.
Right.
because it's
and I think
you're
that's
not
where
purposely hiding, but the average person isn't looking.
Right. Well, and I think it's on the brands side of things. I think it's difficult sometimes for brands themselves to reach out of their comfort zone and put themselves out there because it's more of a free for all when it comes to criticism and things like that out there. Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's, that kind of leads back a little bit to the snobby part of the older guys in the industry. And, they don't like to be told that someone younger than them doesn't think they're doing something correctly. Because, the criticism on the internet is, if you're not used to it can sting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been, in the SPL scene for forever. And there's many years of, whenever Facebook first started, after the forums kind of died, it was people were wilding out with their opinions. They'll gladly tell you about yourself.
Right. And I would say, for as much as that has taken its cycles in the sound quality community as far as that goes, and then people kind of bandwagon on, when something comes around. But I imagine that there's a lot more of that on the SPL side, just because you have more people who are more that type.
It's a lower barrier to entry also.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
And it's a lot lower perceived. No, it's a lower barrier to entry in general, not just perceived. It is cheaper just to throw some subs, a couple of decent 12s in a trunk on a 5,000 watt amp these days and hop into it.
And before you meter it, I mean, it doesn't take much to feel really loud,
Oh no! The meter's an awful thing.
Right? It's like, wait a minute, I thought I was loud.
Like, damn, this thing is so loud to me. Why is it only doing this number? Man, because the meter is
thought this would be at least a 50.
Yeah. What do you mean it's a 43?
Right.
Yep.
Right. Well, it's the same on sound quality side too, right? You can sit there forever thinking that you got the best sounding thing ever.
That truck sounds so damn good.
You get ramped up and somebody just doesn't even want to talk to you after you get done.
Yep. Yeah, your wheels look nice, huh? What? Right. Thanks, I think. But no, I've more than once I've had what I thought I had my truck dialed in. I thought, well, this is it. This is the winner. Just to listen to James's truck and be like, let me go delete my tune. Let me.
Never mind.
Never mind.
In your ramp up on the sound quality side, have you had, or what is been any of your biggest aha moments on what you've learned that really helped sell things into place for you able to like get exponentially better or understand the process better?
It's going to sound like a selling thing from Mark Eldridge's classes, but Mark. So not just learning from Mark is great. Yeah. He is a wealth of information, but you end up around just so many other high level people that you get to learn from, that you just have random conversation can lead to that. Oh, that makes sense. Like, it was one of the biggest ones was, I don't know why I never considered it. Well, I guess I never thought that. So obviously I knew about time alignment. I knew that, you wanted them to EQ, you get all the speakers to EQ similar. For some reason, up until probably a year and a half ago, it never even occurred to me that they should all be arriving at your head at the same volume. Blew my mind apart. I'm like, wait a second. So I don't need to make them the same output volume. I need to arrive at my face at the same volume. Hold on. It took me like 3 minutes. And I was like, oh, that makes sense, man.
Because that speaker's further away, so it's not going to be as loud.
And I never thought about and no one ever mentioned it. Because there's a lot of stuff that's a very simple thing for someone who's been doing SQ for a long time. That's you won't even consider that to tell people because it seems so simple, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh my gosh, I never thought.
Because in your world, coming into it,
make them all loud.
Yeah, turning down a speaker seemed like sacrilege.
Yeah, like what do you mean make it less loud? Why would I do that? And then you want them all to us. That was a big one. And then another big thing for me was how we hear sound. Like what part of like tweeters, like the phase and the time is important, but how loud it is more important than, is more dominant than the exact phase, or if time is exactly right. Whereas like with mid bass, the phase is very important, and it's not quite as sensitive to volume changes.
Right.
It's like, oh, that. I mean, it all seems still new to me because I've only been doing this. Whatever Frisco was my first real competition. So that's how long I've been doing it.
No, I get it. Well, and it's natural when you start learning stuff to want to be like, share that information, right? Like it's like, hey guys. Yeah. Like
and I've been trying to share as much of this with the SPL guys who want to make stuff sound good as I can. Like, hey, like, you shouldn't let your 8-inch mid-range play to 20 to 16,000 hertz, and here's some reasons why. I know you think you should, and I know that, and if it sounds good to you, that's fine. But it would probably sound a little cleaner if you didn't.
Maybe let's not do that. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, so all this SQ stuff still seems like aha moments to me because it's still. I may come off as very confident and very cocky sometimes, and it's a little bit is. Not on purpose, but I'm. What's the best way to put it? A little bit, from SPL. Yeah, you kind of either you have to know you're right, or just
come across looking like you do.
Kind of to an extent. Yeah. But as I've gotten older, I've tried to be better about. Okay, well, now I have gotten better at. I don't know nearly as much as I think I do. Like I look at old mid posts on Facebook, like old forum pages. I'm like, oh man, I really thought I knew everything. Yeah. Like
I know.
My biggest moment with that was, I don't know if you know who Nathan Munson and Chris Munson are. They own Eastern Audio in Clovis, New Mexico. Nathan was the first guy to ever do 170 dB with a single 10. Okay. His son Chris first to do ever 170 dB with a CRX, like SPL like legends throughout the years.
Okay.
And at one point, I thought I knew. I thought I could beat Chris no problem. Well, I told everybody, easy, light work. I was wrong. I got humiliated. I was like, damn, I really don't know what I thought I knew.
Right. Whether SPL or sound quality or just time in the industry or whatever else, what are you most proud of that you've done?
The stuff with Kicker last year.
What's that?
I initially learned. So I learned about Kicker doing the new Solo X stuff back in 2019 after USAC World Finals 19. There was a private meeting. I was invited to go to that by Jimmy Ham and Billy from Bass Wars. So I was like, cool, let me check this out. So I'm a part of the Project X is what it was called. And then towards the, at this point it had been announced and they talk about building a new Bronco. I'm like, oh, that'd be sweet. So they reached out to me and invited me to come in and consult on the Bronco to like design the enclosure and consult on how to build a loud demo vehicle, like at that level. Because they have SPL guys who have been there since Alma. Like they've been there a long time.
Right.
They know about SPL. But it's a different vehicle to build something that can play at a mid 60 and not fall apart.
Right.
And keep going.
Be impressive around it, not just as a sealed container.
Exactly. And to sound good and to not blow apart. Blowing apart being the biggest thing. So they brought me in for that, and that was whenever I went to SEMA the year they unveiled it just to see that on the showroom floor, to know that I was a part of that. It was cool. That, and then the official name of it hasn't been locked in, but basically the competition group from Kicker is back at it.
Oh, okay.
And me and my brother were invited, one of the 4 or 5 people to be a part of it. So we built that wagon in 9 days, and that all culminated in that Jetta wagon.
Yeah,
we did that in 9 days, and that all culminated in a photo shoot for Kicker at Kicker for the wagon to be in their 2024 catalog.
That's cool.
And that was, unfortunately my brother couldn't go because of the last minute thing to get it up there for the photo shoots and this and that. But I was just standing there watching them take photos, like, man, that's it. Like I remember looking at the old catalogs, looking at like Steve Mead's vehicles in these catalogs and that, like, man, that'd be cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's probably my current proudest thing is all the stuff with Kicker with my brother. And all that.
What are you most excited for in the coming year?
Building that SPL vehicle.
Yeah.
We're doing a Dodge Nitro that I did my first 160 with. My brother did his first 160 with. So we're gutting it, and we're doing a big kicker built in it. The goal is a 170 stock cabin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely just ridiculous with all kicker. Probably won't be able to do both this year just because of the time frame on some of the equipment, but they'll probably next year. But I want to win my goal would be to win an SPL championships and SQ championships in the same year at the same event. So like IASCA or Unified, I guess.
Right.
Compete with the Duramax and the Nitro, the same event, and win them both.
Speaking of, what's your thoughts as far as from an SPL standpoint? What's your thoughts as far as IASCA adding SPL to the sound quality format?
I like it.
Okay.
I've only been seriously competing in SQ, a year and a half,
right.
2 years maybe. So at this point, it all seems fine to me. I'm like, okay, that's it. Like I can make something be loud.
Sure,
that's easy.
whatever.
No problem. Right. But to make it sound good will definitely be. Well, I don't know. I won't be competing in that part yet because I'm going to be in Pro 1 or 2.
Right.
But I think we're going to get my wife to compete in probably Pro 3 because she's going to have to be in Pro also. So
okay, it
is what it is.
Right. Right.
So
no, I was just curious. I don't know how the rule. I'm guessing that the only biggest contrast between normal SPL and what they're doing there is obviously one, the cap, and then also the music. Right.
And I've already gone through the music and found it's like a 17-second part of one of the tracks is very specific frequency range that I know my truck is going to peak at.
Nice.
Just based off the size of the cabin, because that's all SPL is just the quarter wavelength from where your enclosure is and the depth of the cabin. So, I already know where the truck's going to peak frequency wise. So I already went through all the tracks, analyzed them all, found the exact part of the exact track that'll most likely be the loudest frequency for a 10-second span. Yeah. Pro tip: go through the music. That's there's a reason all the
and know your vehicle.
Yeah. It's testing is something. Obviously, there's testing in sound quality, but testing in SPL specifically is not done as often or as accurately as it could be. And there's people are leaving a lot of dB just on the table. Just not getting it.
Just because they're just doing what everybody else is doing without considering what their vehicle. It's like using some. I'm not talking about a house curve. I'm saying it'd be like using somebody else's actual EQ presets, or
which actually happens so often in SPL. People are like, man, they're like, hey, I got this new radio. So y'all post up your EQ your EQ so I can try it. Right. I'm like, brother. That's not how that works. That's not how any of this works. Right. But no, that's another thing I've been trying to get the SPL guy to look like we can do this. Like data is important. We can do testing. This stuff isn't new, but it's like you mentioned. There's a secret handshake. There's like if all the upper level guys are upper level and they stay there because they don't share the stuff they learn. Mm-hmm. Like there was recently. Someone posted a full build log on a very loud vehicle, posted all kind of information in this, hundreds of photos, tons of information with a bunch of SPL secrets like in there that I know is not common knowledge. I'm looking through it like, wow, this dude just put a bunch of information out there. Like if people read through this, there's a lot of dB to be gained if you would just read through this.
Just do it, yeah.
Yeah, but I know they're not going to read through it for one, and I think he's since deleted some of it because he caught some backlash from some of the other SPL competitors who were like, "Man, why are you posting all that?"
That's our gatekeeping.
And it's not great. Obviously, gatekeeping that stuff isn't awesome, but I don't blame them. They want to stay on top. I get it.
Right.
It's for me. It's still kind of hard to, when I meter something. Does a 160.0 4700 watts clamp. There's a number. I know what it does.
Right.
I can adjust for that. But if I let so-and-so hear the truck of this show and then they hear it in the next show, I've made no changes, but my score is 3 points lower. Like, why?
Right.
the objective part of it.
Part of the game. It's like
Yeah.
Anybody who's critical at that point, I would challenge you to get a score sheet, print it out. If you need score sheets, let me know. I'll send you PDFs. Print it out and go fill it out, and then take a picture of it, throw the score sheet away, and then after lunch, same day, go do it again. And then before and after breakfast tomorrow, do the same thing again. Compare those 4 score sheets. You will have 4 different score sheets. Yes. Yes.
Yep. And that's the only part of it, the competition thing, where like I know that's part of it. I completely understand, but I'm like, man, I don't like this part. Where's my data? Like, where's my this does this? But
and I think
that's data, that's part of it.
Yeah, and I think the data comes from the sorting, right? Like, to me, and this is where I think the benefit of the money rounds, especially for somebody who's really wanting to learn and get better, and I'm going to be doing better this year on this part of the money rounds in terms of providing this data for people in a more tangible way. I'm eating my own dog food here when I tell people to put more context around the information they're getting. It's one of those things where, obviously, comparing the money round to a single judge scenario or even a 3 judge scenario, like having 6 well-qualified, a solid team of judges, giving that full kind of balanced input on things naturally evens out that data spike,
Yep.
And then you also compare that over, this year, whether you go to Aggieland or you go to SVR, there's going to be 47 other vehicles you're going up against.
Yep.
But that gives you that data where even if you're 45th, there's a lot to gain there to look at what's around you and what the other car, and this is where the data comes in that I'm working on providing, is like, let's say you're a mid-pack. Let's say you're, in the low 20s as far as outcome. Being able to see objectively, okay, this is where my car performed better and worse than others around me. What cars did better than me, and then look at kind of consistencies as far as what they're doing and learn from that, and then be able to progress. Because if you just compare your score sheets to your own score sheets, even if it's the same judge, it's just, you're kind of, and especially if it's the same judge, now you're just kind of gearing towards their
that one judge.
Yeah, their preference. Yep. And I mean, and the thing is, like, the best judges are strong on their, and I don't mean like brand bias or anything else, but I mean their bias on what they know is good. Yeah. Because if you take away that bias, you just have an unqualified person listening at that point. Because if you don't have a bias on what sounds good, why am I listening to what you have to say?
Yep. No, and the money round last year, I didn't do nearly as well as I wanted to, but I think it was 8. Was it 8 judges or 6?
Yeah, it's usually 6.
It must have been 6. I was very tired, so all 6 said the exact same issue in the truck. I finished tuning it like 1:30 in the morning that morning,
right?
And I was first round, so all 6 had the exact same glaring issue. I'm like, all right, let me fix it. Because obviously it's a problem if all 6 say the exact thing. So, and sure enough, my left mid range was like 2.5 dB too hot.
Mm-hmm.
Drop it like a dB and a half, raise the right one like a dB. Boom, it does a lot better in an organization competition at that point. First, and I think it was mask, and third and second in Emma or something like that. Like immediate improvement because of a bunch of data all at once.
Right.
I was able to be like, all right, well, just one judge is hard to, as you were saying,
and you don't have the chance to make the changes in between to throw that off. Like,
exactly.
Because otherwise you're just going after a moving target.
Yep. I mean, and I once the first judge heard it and told me that it was loud, I'm like, fuck, bro. I didn't even think about it. I thought about getting in and adjusting it right then, like just real quick on my iPad.
Right.
Like, you know what? I'll let it ride. Yeah. Like, I know it's not going to do good now. Like, we'll see where it ends up. I mean, I think I was 21st in money round, which I wanted to be top 20, but I think it could have been if it wasn't, 2.5 dB hot on the left side. But we'll find out one day. And then I was inconsistencies with the truck that I could never figure out, and aha moments. Like I always had a left pull from the mid bass and sub, like always. Couldn't figure it out. And it's because there's a wicked null on the left door that I was compensating for, but that compensation was so much extra energy that it was drawing your attention to the left side no matter what.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So
if you gotta like, it seems like it's always like 315 or 630 or somewhere in there just because of wavelengths. But yeah, if you got a big null somewhere and you increase it, your RTA doesn't change much, and you keep increasing, just go back and drop it. Stop. Leave it alone. Let it go.
Mine's actually it's a low null. It's like 80 hertz on the left mid bass.
And
so I was
still in that
range, I could EQ it out. It would go away, but it was so much extra energy that the whole door was moving basically.
Yeah.
So.
And that's the thing. Like, you might be able to if you got to spike in 12 dB or something there. Yeah, it's
which is basically what I was doing. It was so much extra energy, and I never, I don't have a lot of references out here.
Right.
Taylor can build some good stuff, but he's always changing things, so nothing's ever done. So I can't ever listen to anything. Brad tuned his Jeep once 7 years ago, and I don't think he's tuned it since.
Right.
And then, James's truck is always technically perfect. So I mean, this is great, but shit. And then, so like Jeffrey tuned the truck for the first time I competed at Frisco, but after that, I never let him do it again because I knew I had to learn how to do it. Because to me, is like if I can't at least make it kind of do, like if I we'll take tuning for example. If he didn't tune it, I couldn't have competed. I don't like that because I couldn't have got it to even remotely close to that point. So that doesn't work for me. Like I had to at least learn to semi tune it. So I was like, all right, buddy, I delete this. I'm gonna figure it out. And then not having references close has been a little bit of a hindrance, but I'd rather learn to do it than have to rely completely on someone else to do it.
I got you.
So like the small mid bass thing, someone in person like him or anybody who been doing SU for a while, they might have picked that up a year ago.
Right.
And be like, oh, just this left mid bass is too loud. You shouldn't do what you're doing. Let's fix it right now. Could have been a year ago, but because I was doing it myself, and I just didn't know.
Well, in your head, that part checkbox,
yes, like
it was correct.
I made a match.
Right.
I made a match.
Right.
Like, wasn't that the point?
Right.
Like, yeah, you made a match, but like all the energy, and that was another aha moment where it's like the loudness. Right, it was louder in my head because of the extra low end energy.
Mm-hmm.
Mind blowing.
Plus, what you're feeling just viscerally in that situation. Yeah,
the whole door is moving an extra, couple millimeters because the eights are going crazy.
Yep.
The money around stuff's awesome. That's it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Being that you have the background experience in car audio and SPL, and then recently making that ramp into sound quality, and I think there's still a fair amount of people out there that are into car audio who are like, yeah, I just don't want to compete, or I don't know. But if somebody is making that jump either to crossover or start competing in sound quality or whatever, what advice would you give those people?
Go to the shows. And, I tell people that, and then, I hear some stories from people, from my friends, like, oh, they weren't very nice. It's just like, damn. Because like all my show experience has been at SQOLOGY events, has been at like Aggie, Frisco, where everyone was just super friendly. Mm-hmm. So I tell people, come to Aggie, go to SVR, like go to the shows that SQOLOGY is involved in, because there's going to be just a bunch of good people there who will help you if you need it. Mm-hmm. And I ask to hear things. It's just.
I think one thing you've brought up a couple times now, like having Taylor, having somebody there, I think having that connection of some sort. And I'll be completely. I think I've probably said before, but like my biggest reason, honestly, for like doing the events is because I'm able to make a connection with all the people there before I get to the show, to where I'm more comfortable now when I get there. It's like that everybody has to talk to me to be there. So now I've got that connection going in. Now we have a reason to say something. And I think that's, and being, I think that, again, that just the people part, that barrier to entry is a hard enough point. But if you're able to find somebody that's going there, or that looks like they're on your wavelength, even just a message on Facebook or whatever, just like reach out and say, hey, I'm coming to the event this day. Can I listen to your car? I see you're going to be there, or whatever, or just like you said, if it's an SQOLOGY event, anybody can reach out to me and be like, hey, I don't know who to talk to. Can I, and I do this a lot. It's like, hey, walk over this person. Hey, can you give this person a demo? Yes, cool. Can you direct them to the next person to get a demo from after you're done? Yes. All right. Cool. Get that, get the chain link going. And I think, that's something that it's.
No, you're right.
Obviously,
you gotta get it going.
Obviously, if you walk around not talking to people, everybody's going to be grumpy at you because you're walking around not talking to people. Like, it's give and take. But if you're able to get that first conversation going, even if it's before the event, and that's what I would suggest, then it makes that much more comfortable and easy to get things going where people will open up. Because I don't know. I mean, yes, we have Dixon out there, but that's
everything.
But it's I think it's a small percentage of the people, and even those people are all going to be more than welcome to open. As long as they're done judging, or as long as they're not in the middle of something right then. People under pressure are going to be under pressure and are going to be an asshole sometimes. That's going to happen. But go on to the next one or come back later.
Yep. And I think that might be why like the basshead side is, it's a more, I don't want to say open type of thing at shows, but you're more likely to be walking around a bass show and some random person's like, hey, you want to hear my truck?
Mm-hmm.
Just for no reason other than they just want you to hear their truck.
Right.
And it may be a selfish reason of I want them to see how awesome my stereo is.
Exactly.
Which is fine. But, you just walk around an SQ event, no one's going to be like, hey, random person, you want to hear this?
Right.
And it's not anything bad because for the SQ side, it's just not as it's a completely different vibe of a show.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not going to be prevalent like that because I think most people are obviously I get asked a lot, hey, come listen to my car, and man,
because you're well known, but your opinion matters too.
But what I'm getting at is like I think people even then it's like, oh man, am I bugging him to ask him whatever, and I think there's that push and pull too. Like somebody's not going to. It's almost like you said with the SPL guys, they're excited. Like, hey, I want to show off my vehicle. Come listen to it. And I think the SQ guys do too. That it's just more of that.
SQ guys love to show their stereo. They tell you all about it.
But
I love it.
But I think they do have to be more prodded and asked versus them expecting them to come to you because especially an SQ event, they don't necessarily know why you're there, who you're there. It's like there's so little foot traffic that it's almost like a tinfoil hat on what you're doing there if they don't know you, So
yeah, like who is this person? Like why are they?
We don't know.
Why are they
guy.
here?
Stranger danger. Yeah.
Where it's like the big SPL shows like Slamology.
You got 10,000 people there.
Oh, there's 10,000 people and everyone's there. Like why they're there. They're here. They're there to see you break your back window or float a baby in the door or they want. We know why you're there, bud.
Yep. No.
But you walk around like SQL like Aggie Land.
Right.
There's 100 people.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. And half of those are competing. So
yeah. And the other half are they work there or
or judges.
Exactly. So they see someone new, they're like,
Yeah. But I don't know. That's my thing. Like if you're wanting to get into it, I think everybody's more than willing to do whatever. You just got to kind of get that connection going and then ask for the next connection. But I think sound quality guys too can do more to reach out and be that connection. So
yeah, I've tried it. All the events I go to, like at Aggie or Frisco, one bass head showed up playing a stereo, but I was like, all right, you gotta cut that out. That ain't here. Stop it. Take your 915s down the road, bud. That ain't here. So like I tell people, hey, look, I'm gonna be out there. You want to hear the truck? Come check it out. Come on out. Don't bring your bass truck.
Right.
Don't do it.
This is not demo zone. Unfortunately.
Yeah, which is different types of personalities. A lot of guys go to shows just to demo, just to show off. So if they can't, they're like, oh, I'm not gonna go.
Right. And that's the thing. Like it's not. Yeah, you're gonna have to come in to learn something else, not to do what you're used to doing.
Oh yeah, like was it? It was last year. They did. Was it Aggie Light? I think they did the dueling demos thing.
Yeah.
I was like, bro, like this is my jam. This is. You want me to turn it up? Yeah, exactly. And after that show was done, my first thought was, man, Brad's Jeep would have killed it. Would have won so easily. Because it's just such a fun, loud thing. It's got 218s IB that he's not afraid to send 3,000 watts each one.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah. So I think he signed up for Aggieland, so I'm hoping he shows up.
Yeah, I recently confirmed everything with him, so he should be there. We'll see.
Yeah,
I'm
for
not
anyone
going
who
yet, but we'll see.
Oh no, I've already told him. I told him last time. I said, look, if you're not going, I said, I'll just come pick your Jeep up. I'll put it on the trailer. I'll take it with me. Like, I think more people should hear that thing because it's such a fun vehicle.
Yeah, for sure.
Who else has all 10s IB in the kicks and 218s IB in the back and these giant 6.5 inch mid ranges cut into the dash?
Heck yeah, my kind of guy.
Yep, and that's why I ended up getting along so well with with Chris and all those guys from MTI and Jeffrey. They all just like it loud, and they're all cool people and all super welcoming. But I also have to, anytime I get really welcome somewhere, I always have to go like, are they welcoming me just because I have notoriety in a different scene? But with like Chris and them, Chris couldn't give a shit how well known I am in the SPL world. You don't give a shit.
Right.
So they always just seem real genuine.
No, for sure.
Because I had a situation with a SQ based company with the owner was just like, oh, I just tolerate him, talking about me, because he helps me reach a bigger market. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that's lame, but okay. Like,
so you're using me for my body.
Like, if you tell me that, I'm fine with it. Like, I get it. I know that I have a following and I have a big company in that industry. Like, I get it. Right. But tell me, if you want, like, hey, I want to do some marketing with you. Okay, sounds good. Not, hey, I'll pretend to be your friend, and then as soon as it's not convenient, fuck you.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah. Appreciate it, bro. No, I'm not human at all. Don't worry about it.
Oh no, exactly. Like, thanks. I'm not checking up on you whenever you were having a real bad time at 2:00 in the morning, making sure you're all right. But okay, right. Yeah. My bad, bro.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah, I've kept that whole situation kind of on the low-ish, but that was lame.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
When you're reading things on the internet, especially messages or comments from somebody, read them multiple times in multiple tones. Because the chances you're reading it correctly are very low. You're probably reading it with an already built-in preconception of how this person is saying it. Right. And they're probably not saying it the way you think. Right. I actively think about that, and I still struggle with it often. I have to, anytime someone comments something, I assume like some people are just being dicks. And they may not be. They may just be legitimately saying whatever they're saying, but I just take it as, sometimes I'll just automatically assume, no, this person's just being mean. Right.
I have the same problem, especially, I mean, I'm obviously I have
What's their name? Who is it?
Yeah. No, me personally, like I have a sarcastic sense of humor, but then the way I deliver that a lot of times, people don't know if it's sarcastic or not. And then,
and especially if it's via text, they're like,
And then on the flip side, though, I have a very difficult time reading sarcasm in general, like whether I'm a person or text or either way. So then I end up being the one like you, like double thinking all those scenarios, like they could be sarcastic, but maybe they weren't. But it was right in between. Like where are we on this? So then I tend to lean toward just assuming that, everything like that is just like me. It's just sarcastic humor and let it roll. But then if I found out later that it was serious, and it's like, oh, well, now I got to roll back. You're getting rollback minutes now.
Now we got to backtrack. Hold on, man. No, so that, and one thing I struggle with is like negativity and like quote drama and all this stuff. It like weighs heavy on me, so I try to forget it quickly. Yeah. So like I'll have some people who will just be like, oh, you said this and this to me, a year ago. I'm like, oh,
really?
Or someone will apologize to me, like, oh man, I was real rude or whatever. I'm like, okay, that's like no problem, man. Like I don't remember it at all. Okay, no problem, dude.
Man, like, it really pains me to forgive you, but I don't remember this at all. What's your name?
I don't remember this at all. Like not even a little. which is
Not
to
a bad
them they're
thing.
like, oh damn, he don't care at all. And no,
Right.
I don't want to hold on to that. So
Right.
so if like me and someone have an argument, like me and Andy Waymeyer have arguments a lot, like
Can't
I'll
imagine
forget.
why.
I'll forget that. Like at this point, I'm not gonna forget that we go back and forth. To me, feels like fun a little bit. I don't know how he feels, but
Yeah, right.
but like I'll just forget that he said this mean thing at one point. I'm just like, oh, and someone will remind me. I'm like, oh, you're right, he did. I totally forgot.
That's right.
Damn. Oh yeah, so like I'll be in the middle of a quote beef and just forget about the beef because we didn't talk for 3 months. I'm like, oh. You were right. I forgot that we don't like each other.
Right. That's right.
And then
I'm
I'm like,
angry at you.
why don't I like you? You know what? Good enough.
Doesn't matter.
No. Andy did say the other day that I know how to tune. So,
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I mean,
Confirmed. Stamp of approval.
no, he said it because granted, I was being a dick. Someone said that he was going to get some training from Andy. I was like, why don't you go get some good training? Obviously, being a bit of a dick.
Right.
I know Andy trains very well. Obviously, I was like, why don't you get some good training? And Andy replied to me. He's like, man, it's easy. If someone like Drew can learn to do it in between tapings of Duck Dynasty, anyone can. Bro, I was like, for this dude, it took me 24 hours. It was 23 hours, 45 minutes for it to click. He'd be like, wait a second. He said, I know how to tune.
Right. You take the Duck Dynasty comment out of it. And
which
you
fair enough.
Pull the good part. Right.
Yeah. I went back and I was like, wait a second. Thanks, Andy.
That's awesome. Well, man, I appreciate your time. I think it's been awesome.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked about everything and nothing at the same time.
I think we all have a lot to learn from each other all the time. So.
Oh yeah, that's what I try to learn from everybody. I know I don't know. The more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Same. Honestly, that's why I mean, and maybe it's just because of years of trying and coming into it, and especially, and I don't mean this to sound like derogatory at all, but I mean guys like you that are new in it that come in with learning and then have these exciting ideas, and I'm like, and people. Naturally, sometimes that disrupts things, and then people who are used to norm, calm, like nobody's ruffling any feathers right now. And they're like, "Oh man, screw this guy. He's just making." And I'm like, "Man, who cares?" Like, I mean, I don't mean who cares, but I'm like,
no, but who cares? Like,
I've seen it all enough. Like, I'm not for the guys coming in doing the disruption. It's like I'm not going bandwagon with because I don't. Bandwagon on that you're doing and say that you're doing God's work or anything. It's like, man, I see that it's just same song, different verse. I mean, and this was my point, like back, and I didn't really call him out there. I will here now because we're in the last couple minutes of recording, but Richard Clark did the same thing at a huge level, trying to, convince the entire cardio industry of the science of things and what was right and what was, what you could hear and what you couldn't and all these other things, and put $10,000 on the line famously and everything else, he wanted to prove a lot of points and be right. And I mean, ultimately he was also a bit of an illusionist, in terms, he was the kind of a magician. So in terms of, yes, he was right, but he kind of stacked his deck. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. but at the same time, like a lot of people, I mean, you're doing in your way something similar to what he did then, and there's been 1,000 different iterations of that in between, and I don't think it's a bad. I mean, I think it's a good thing. I just, it's like I'm not going bandwagon one way or the other because I'm tired of trying to convince people of something.
Oh no, and that's like I'm posting these ideas and these testing, and I've said, I've also said, I feel this is the best way because I always start with I feel or I think, not this is the way, because it's not. It's not. There are people, like you said, who want to convince everyone of this is the way it needs to be. This is the only way it can be.
Right.
Like, nah, man. Do I think that this is a better way to do things? Sure. Yeah, I like this. Like the off-axis thing. I mean, when I first started talking about that, people were like, "Oh, that's not right." I would make some posts every now and then that off-axis is the best axis, and people just lose their minds. it's a super simple formula for viral posts. And sometimes I'll do them for fun. I did one recently in the truck scene for fun after I went and picked up something from Houston. My buddy owns a gauge cluster company. He modifies clusters.
Okay.
So all I did was post a photo of the new cluster we had built saying, I don't know why you would use anyone but Gauge Works. They're the best. Or they're awesome. It was very vague. I didn't insult anyone. Didn't say anything negative to anybody else. I just said, I think they're the best. 1,000 comments in like 3 hours. You'd have thought I slapped their mothers with the cluster. It's the same. You call into question someone's like set belief, even if you don't directly call it into question.
Right.
You're the enemy.
Yeah.
Well,
and I think part of that is that, what you mentioned before, as far as the confidence in which you deliver things, that confidence is sometimes mistaken for absolute statements of truth that you're trying to convey. And so then obviously people polarize. But I mean, in a way, it's not always a bad thing because it gets people to be set in what they believe. And maybe, hey, if they're, it can't all be an echo chamber of everybody agreeing with you. So
nope, because if it was, let's say you end up with 30 years of SQ vehicles that play at 91 dB and no louder. Because that's a concept. That's what people in SPL think that SQ vehicles are all quiet, can't play loud. And for the longest, I didn't understand. I mean, I had the same thought until I met these MTI fellas, and everything's a lot louder than I thought it was. And I just put it together probably a few months ago as to why there's been an increase in volume. To me, at least, my perception of SQ getting louder is because I started messing with these, tinkering with vehicles, tuning a little bit, around here. Like, okay, if I turn this up, I really hear this left side a lot more, but at low volume, I don't hear that reflection. It was an aha moment. I'm like, oh, that's why the off-axis stuff can be louder, because you're not hiding the reflection with quietness. You're just dealing with it. So it's there all the time. So you can turn it up louder. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Whereas like vehicles that are on axis is the best way to describe it. Everything's pointing at you. You turn up the volume, and there's reflections off those side windows that are not going to be there when they're quiet. Well, they're there. They're just so quiet you can't hear them. I was like, huh. And I may be thinking about it completely wrong, even still, but it made sense in my head. So
that's all that matters.
That's all that matters in the end.
I appreciate your time, like I said.
Dude, I appreciate you, and I appreciate, like I said, when I saw that you said SQOLOGY was done, or I can't remember the exact wording, but I was like, man, that sucks. Like I like him, and I like his shows.
I appreciate
you put on shows that are quality, they're nice, and you've always been super welcoming to me and like any of the people that I've shown up with. So I appreciate you and all the work you put in.
Well, thank you for saying that, and we'll see you at Aggieland.
Yes, sir.
How about the ones we especially like? Which ones? The ones with the cars that go, I hear you. Hit it.